need, again, we're slowly moving there, but we get there in 5-year bits and bytes. Yeah. So if we looked at where we were in 1989 and where we are in 2010, well, we've progressed. We certainly have a lot more information now than we did have in 1989. We certainly have a lot more.
It really is a new phenomenon, though. I mean, you're talking 35 years for an industry. That's not a very long time.
Well, but again, government is a fairly new industry too, in that sense. Especially the government of the post-war government, 1945, was a very different government from the government beforehand, and governments and societies are just much more complex. I think, you see, lobbyists are almost essential in modern day. And again, I'm talking, say, from the point of view of procurement or regulation or something like that. Firms do need people working for them who understand government and what government has to do and what government does do. But they also need people in those firms to be able to
Hi, Pat. We're doing an interview in here. No problem. We're almost done, actually.
They need people to be able to explain to government, what impact government's actions has on the firm, and indeed sometimes what firms require from government to be able to stay in business or prosper or whatnot. So,
that's all
and so if you assume that's the case, and you also assume that some businesses, a lot of businesses cannot afford these people on staff. They're expensive people. Then they have to be able to hire them on a consulting basis. Then you're going to have a consulting industry that does that too. So the question is, they're going to be there. They have to know government to do their job. They have to be on top of government. But when they do their job, the important thing to me is that it be done in a transparent fashion. People see them doing their job, so that they can judge whether the decision at the end was fairly arrived at.
Yeah, and I would just state a slightly different way. People see everything that they do for the people they're lobbying, whether it's lobbying them or helping them out in some other way.
That's essential, you're saying?
Yeah, because that's how you, if they have to track and disclose every single communication that they had, then you would know, well, you were also communicating with them about helping them fundraise, or helping them out in some other way with whatever their pre-election or election campaign is. Because then you track all the conflicts of interest. And it's only by chance that these two situations we've complained about have come out in terms of lobbyists helping ministers, a minister in one case and a parliamentary secretary in another. Because there's no requirement for disclosure of volunteer labor who is helping out the parties or candidates. That's not required under elections law. And so again, and there's Elections Canada doesn't go out and inspect, nor does the Ethics Commissioner or Commissioner of Lobbying, who's helping out on campaigns. So people generally know who's in the war room of the parties, because those people are usually generally very public, and the media gets some access to those war room, the list of staff and things like that. But beyond that, across the country, who is helping out on various campaigns of people who could become a cabinet minister after 35 days. There's no tracking of that. There's no disclosure of it. There's no transparency, no auditing. And as a result, you don't know where conflicts of interest might be created. The one thing I would take issue with is that it's a new industry. It may be that the hired gun consultants, that's a new area, but corporations have been calling ministers forever.
Right.
And interest groups, there were citizen groups 120 years ago as well, who would be going and meeting with people. So people have been lobbying ever since there's been government that has the power to make decisions, even if it was the king or queen. But
it just hasn't been called a lobby industry before.
Well, you haven't had the professionalization necessarily of the citizen groups. And then the professionalization of the lobbyists as well. It hasn't been a profession, but it's the people have been lobbying, and there have been staff lobbyists mainly in the past, because it was a smaller economy, a smaller government. You know, a policy development division, I know in the Ontario government, the first one they had was 1971. Before that, it was just the minister's staff who did the policy. They didn't have a policy bureaucracy.
Let me ask one more question before we go. What are lobbyists doing in the run-up to next week's budget? What are the hot items that they might be lobbying around?
Well, if you look, there's the academic lobby, which has been very active in trying to turn the government to its mind or focus to the economy of the future rather than the economy of the past, the knowledge economy, and the role of granting councils, research, etc. There's also, because of the recession, incredible enrollment pressures as more and more students opt to stay or go on to post-secondary education in the absence of any alternatives, viable alternatives. So that lobby's been very active. You obviously have the pension lobby. That's very active on the both in terms of the public service, but also in terms of the corporations and others that
they're pretty concerned about what they might be asked to do.
Exactly. You have, of course, the environmental lobby ongoing, I think there was a lot of concern about this budget, which has dissipated to some degree when people see that it's really going to be not a budget at all. The next important budget is going to be the next one, rather than this one. You know, you have the municipal lobby arguing that the infrastructure still has a lot of fixing to do, and you know, we should carry on with that. I mean, I don't think this budget is perhaps any different in that respect than the other, except perhaps the post-secondary one is a bit more active this time, it seems. But you know, you typically, and I don't know which one it is, but you know, typically you see one or two groups that see a signal that this is the budget to get something. For example, I can remember in the late 90s, the constant pressure from doctors and dentists to raise our SP limits, and so it was, you know, every year you could see the big push there, and there was also the push from the Public Policy Forum on the deficit and the debt, and doing something on that again through the early 90s up to the Martin budget. This one, you know, I mean, it's too early for the big cutters to be lobbying. As I say, next year I think you'll see the Council of Chief Executives and, you know, all of the time to cut back government lobby very, very strong in the face of an ongoing deficit. You know, but I don't think it's there this year. I think they're just, again, a bit too scared that we're not anywhere near a recovery to push for that.
Thoughts on that, Doug?